No one in Black Hollow rang bells when a child died. The village believed bells confused the dead, called them back when they should be learning how to stay gone. Instead, the people closed their doors, shuttered their windows, and waited for silence to do its work. Silence had always obeyed. Until the day Lily Harrow was buried with her doll. Lily was 7, small enough that the earth seemed too heavy for her, too final. She died the way children sometimes do in places like Black Hollow. Quietly, without witnesses, found cold in her bed with her eyes open as if she'd seen something just before the end and didn't have time to scream. Her mother swore Lily had been talking to someone the night before. Sitting upright in bed. Whispering. Laughing. But in Black Hollow, people didn't ask who children talked to. They already knew. The doll was porcelain, old-fashioned, with a cracked face and hand-painted eyes that never reflected light quite right. Lily called her Belle. She carried it everywhere, even after the village elders warned her mother that dolls like that were meant to be kept wrapped, sealed, unlooked at. Children don't choose their toys, old Miriam had said. Sometimes the toys choose them. At the burial, the ground was hard and gray. The priest refused to touch the doll. So Lily's mother placed it herself, tucking it against her daughter's chest like a final promise. 7 days, the villagers murmured as the dirt fell. 7 days and she will rest. That was the rule. 7 nights for the soul to understand it was dead. 7 nights for the living to stay inside, avoid mirrors, ignore knocking, and never, under any circumstances, visit the grave. If the doll stayed buried, Lily would stay buried. For 7 days, nothing happened. No footsteps outside doors. No crying in the fields. No shadows where there shouldn't be shadows. People began to breathe again. On the 8th morning, a scream shattered Black Hollow. It came from the cemetery. By the time the villagers arrived, the fog had thickened, curling low around the headstones like fingers. And there, sitting neatly beside Lily Harrow's grave, was the doll. Porcelain face smeared with dirt. Dress torn. Hands brown with soil. Its head was twisted backward. Not broken. Turned. Carved into its chest with something sharp and patient were 4 words. She didn't come alone. The villagers stood frozen. No one touched it. No one prayed. Because prayer was for things that still listened. Old Miriam arrived last. She didn't gasp when she saw the doll. She didn't step back. She knelt, her bones cracking as she lowered herself, and studied the carving with a trembling finger that never quite made contact. 8 days, she whispered. It waited. The priest crossed himself. This is blasphemy. No, Miriam said. This is invitation. By sundown, the doll was locked inside the church's iron relic box, wrapped in cloth soaked with salt and ash. The elders marked doors with chalk. Candles were lit. Mirrors were covered. Still, something felt wrong. Not loud wrong. Not violent wrong. Crowded. That night, Lily's mother woke to the sound of breathing beside her bed. Slow. Careful. Learning. She didn't open her eyes. She remembered the rules. Don't look. Don't speak. Don't acknowledge what believes itself unseen. The breathing stopped. Then came the whisper. Mommy, she's cold. The voice wasn't Lily's. It was too layered. Too full. In another house, a man felt small porcelain fingers brush his ankle as he slept. In another, a child sat upright, staring at the corner of the ceiling, smiling at nothing. At the church, the iron box began to knock from the inside. Once. Twice. Then scratching. By morning, 3 villagers were missing. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just beds left warm. Doors still locked from the inside. And in the cemetery, Lily's grave had collapsed inward. As if something beneath it had finally finished climbing out. Old Miriam stood at the edge of the pit, her face gray with knowing. They buried her with a door, she said softly. And doors don't stay closed forever. From the church came the sound of porcelain cracking. Not breaking. Smiling. Somewhere in Black Hollow, something that had never been human learned how to wear a child's voice, and realized it wasn't alone anymore. By the second night, Black Hollow stopped pretending this was about a doll. Dolls did not leave scratches on the inside of iron boxes. Dolls did not breathe. Dolls did not wait. Old Miriam gathered the remaining villagers inside the church just before dusk. No one argued. The air outside had begun to feel wrong, thicker, as if every breath belonged to something else first. She stood beneath the warped wooden cross, her shadow bending unnaturally across the wall, and spoke the words no one wanted to hear. "The rules have changed," she said. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "The old rules were made for a single spirit," Miriam continued. "A confused child. A lonely dead. What came back from that grave is not singular." Someone whispered, "Then what is it?" Miriam's eyes flicked to the iron relic box behind the altar. The knocking had stopped an hour earlier, which somehow felt worse. "It's a gathering place." The priest wiped sweat from his brow. "You're saying the doll is a vessel," Miriam finished. "And Lily was never meant to rest. She was meant to open." At that moment, a sharp crack echoed through the church. Everyone turned. A thin fracture had appeared in the iron box's lid, blackened around the edges as if something hot had pressed against it from within. The cloth wrapping was seeping moisture, not water, but something darker, something that smelled like wet soil and old pennies. A child screamed. The candles flickered, then steadied, then flickered again, as if deciding whether to die. Miriam raised her voice. "Listen carefully. If you want to survive the night, you will follow these rules exactly." She held up one finger. "Do not answer voices that call you by name. Even if they sound right. Especially if they sound right." A second finger. "Do not sleep alone. Whatever is walking cannot stand being ignored." A third finger, shaking now. "If you see the doll, no matter where, do not touch it. Do not run. And do not look at its face. Someone near the back sobbed. What if it looks at us?" Miriam swallowed. "Then it's already chosen you." A sudden thud interrupted her. The iron box lurched. Once. Twice. Then went still. The silence that followed pressed down on everyone's ears until it hurt. The priest stepped forward. "We should destroy it." Miriam turned slowly. "It's too late for that. Fire feeds it. Breaking frees it." A low, unfamiliar sound drifted through the church. Laughing. Soft. Childlike. Coming from everywhere at once. The relic box split open with a metallic shriek. The cloth burst outward, unraveling midair as if torn by invisible hands. And there, sitting upright inside the box, was the doll. Cleaner now. Its porcelain face gleamed, cracks smoothed as if healed. Its painted lips curved upward, not wide, not grotesque, but knowing. Its head was no longer twisted. It was straight. Facing them. Several villagers fell to their knees. One man vomited. The priest backed away, whispering prayers that tangled over themselves. The doll's eyes moved. Not rolling. Tracking. It tilted its head, slowly, thoughtfully, like a child studying an insect. Then it spoke. Not aloud. Inside them. "You buried her wrong." The candles went out all at once. Darkness swallowed the church. People screamed. Benches scraped. Something small and hard scuttled across the floor, porcelain clicking against stone. When the lights returned, the doll was gone. So were two children. That night, Black Hollow tore itself apart from the inside. Doors slammed open. Families barricaded themselves in rooms. Chalk markings smeared and failed. Mirrors cracked beneath unseen pressure. Lily's mother locked herself in her bedroom, clutching a kitchen knife she didn't remember picking up. The air around her smelled like dirt and baby powder. "Lily," she whispered before she could stop herself. The answer came from under the bed. "I'm here," the voice said sweetly. Her hand trembled. "Come out," she said, tears spilling down her face. A pause. Then the sound of porcelain scraping wood. "I can't," the voice replied. "There isn't enough room. They're all here with me." The bed shifted slightly, pressed from below, as if many small hands were testing its weight. Across the village, old Miriam stood alone at the cemetery, staring into the collapsed grave. She held a bundle of old bones wrapped in red cloth, remains she had sworn never to unearth. Her last option. From the pit came whispers layered atop whispers, rising like insects. Miriam closed her eyes. "We did not forget you," she said. "We failed you." The earth trembled. Something beneath Black Hollow stretched, and smiled. And far away, in the dark, Annabelle learned a new rule. Fear tasted better when shared. By the third day, Black Hollow no longer felt like a village. It felt like a mouth. Houses hunched inward, windows dark and watchful, doors swollen from the inside as if the buildings themselves were holding their breath. No birds sang. No dogs barked. Even the wind seemed to avoid the place, skirting its edges like it knew better than to enter. People stopped asking where the missing had gone. Because some of them had started to come back. At dawn, Thomas Klein staggered out of the woods barefoot and bleeding, his clothes hanging in strips. His eyes were wide, unblinking, glassy with terror that hadn't finished happening yet. When his wife ran to him, he flinched, not away from her, but past her, staring at something over her shoulder. "They don't stop moving," he whispered. "What doesn't?" she cried, gripping his face. His mouth trembled. "The children. They found bite marks along his arms. Small ones. Human ones. Dozens of them." Before anyone could ask more, Thomas collapsed, and began screaming. Not words. Not pain. Recognition. They tied him to a bed in the schoolhouse. Old Miriam examined him with shaking hands, lifting his eyelids, pressing fingers to his temples. "He's been walked," she said quietly. The room went still. "That's impossible," someone said. "The walking only happens during burial rites." Miriam shook her head. "Not anymore. Not since the doll learned how to carry more than one." Thomas thrashed against his bindings, sobbing. "They took turns," he choked out. "They wore my legs. My hands. I could feel them learning." That night, no one slept. Those who tried found themselves standing in familiar places that felt wrong, hallways longer than they should be, rooms with too many corners, mirrors that showed movements a second too late. And always, somewhere nearby, the soft click of porcelain feet. Lily's mother didn't dream. She woke up standing in the hallway, knife still in her hand, the front door wide open. Mud coated her feet. Fingernails caked with dirt. She had no memory of leaving her room. But in her kitchen sink lay a small porcelain shoe, cracked and smiling. In the cemetery, old Miriam began the unearthing. The bones she carried belonged to the first child ever buried with a doll in Black Hollow, a girl named Ruthie Bell, who had died nearly a century ago when the superstition was young and poorly understood. They said Ruthie never rested. That her voice lingered in wells. That her laughter followed people home. They had buried her deep. And when that wasn't enough, they buried others with her. Miriam dug until her hands bled. The ground resisted, trembling faintly with each strike of the shovel, as if something below was aware of her effort. Then the whispers started. Not mocking. Inviting. "You're late," they sighed. "We've been so lonely." Miriam uncovered the bones, and froze. They weren't arranged like remains. They were stacked. Carefully. Small skulls nested together. Tiny hands woven into each other like prayer. At the center sat the doll. Annabelle. Not buried. Seated. Its porcelain body was etched with new carvings now, names, dates, symbols that pulsed faintly beneath the surface. Its eyes were darker, deeper, like wells that had never known light. It looked at Miriam and smiled. "You taught us," it said, not aloud, but everywhere. "You taught us how to stay." Miriam screamed as the ground collapsed. Back in the village, the rules failed completely. People saw loved ones standing outside locked doors, begging to be let in. Children heard their parents calling from under beds. Husbands felt wives climb into bed beside them, cold, damp, breathing too slowly. Those who looked directly at the doll didn't die right away. They changed. Their movements became stiff, jerky, precise. Their heads tilted at wrong angles. Their smiles came too late, or not at all. They gathered in the streets at night, standing silently, eyes fixed on nothing, waiting for instructions they could feel but not hear. And above them, moving from roof to roof with delicate porcelain steps, Annabelle watched. Learning. Expanding. Lily's mother finally saw it at her bedroom door. The doll stood there, dress spotless, hair neatly brushed, head cocked slightly to the side. Behind it, the hallway stretched far longer than it should have, lined with children she recognized, and some she didn't. "They like you," Annabelle said softly. "You listen." Tears streamed down her face. "Where is my daughter?" Annabelle stepped aside. The children behind it opened their mouths. And Lily spoke, from all of them at once. "We're sharing now." The house shuddered as something deep beneath Black Hollow shifted its weight. The doll took a step forward. The third night began. And sleep, whether people wanted it or not, came for everyone. Black Hollow did not wake on the fourth day. It surfaced. A fog heavier than any before rolled through the village, thick enough to muffle screams, dense enough to make distance feel unreal. People moved slowly, cautiously, like divers afraid their next step would take them somewhere without air. Those who had slept did not remember falling asleep. Those who hadn't slept could no longer tell the difference. Old Miriam was found at the edge of the cemetery just before noon. Alive. That alone felt wrong. Her body lay twisted against a headstone, clothes soaked with mud and something darker, her fingers clawed raw as if she had tried to pull herself free from the ground itself. Her eyes were open, staring at the sky, but they tracked movement that no one else could see. When they carried her into the church, she laughed. Not mad laughter. Relieved laughter. "It let me go," she whispered. "Because it doesn't need me anymore." The priest knelt beside her. "What did you see?" Miriam's gaze slid to the far wall, where shadows bent and overlapped unnaturally. "I saw the shape," she said. "The thing we buried beneath the rules. Beneath the dolls. Beneath the children." Her breathing hitched. "It isn't haunting us," she continued. "It's growing." That afternoon, the villagers discovered something worse than missing people. They found empty bodies. Men and women sitting upright in their homes, eyes open, breathing shallow, but hollow. When spoken to, they smiled faintly. When touched, their skin felt cool and unfamiliar, like something wearing warmth instead of producing it. They obeyed simple instructions. Walk. Sit. Stand. But when left alone, they turned their heads in unison toward the cemetery. Waiting. Lily's mother was among them. She stood in her living room, hands folded neatly in front of her, eyes fixed on the doorway. Mud ringed her ankles. Her knife lay clean on the table, as if it had never been used. When the priest said her name, she blinked. Once. Slowly. Then. She spoke in a voice that wasn't quite hers. She says you're afraid of the wrong thing. The priest stepped back. Who says? Her lips curved into a careful smile. The doll is only a mouth. The church bells rang on their own. Not loud. Not fast. Measured. With each toll, something answered from beneath the village, a deep, patient vibration felt more than heard. Windows rattled. Cracks spidered across walls. Children covered their ears and screamed about whispers crawling inside their heads. Annabelle appeared that evening in the center of the village square. No one saw her arrive. She was simply there. Standing atop the old well, porcelain shoes balanced effortlessly on stone slick with moss. Around her gathered the changed ones, dozens now, forming a perfect circle, hands clasped, heads tilted toward her in devotion. The doll raised one small hand. Silence fell. They're ready, Annabelle said, her voice carrying without volume. They've made room. Miriam was carried outside, propped against the church steps so she could see. That's not her voice, she rasped. That's not any child's voice. Annabelle looked at her. For the first time, the doll's smile widened. You remember me, it said gently. Before the porcelain. Before the stories. The ground beneath the well cracked open with a low, wet sound. From below came the smell of old earth, rot, and something ancient, something that had never belonged to the living world. The stones around the well shifted, widening the mouth as if Black Hollow itself was being asked to open wider. Inside, something moved. Not climbing. Unfolding. Miriam began to sob. We buried you hungry. Annabelle nodded. And you fed me children. A shape rose within the well, not fully visible, not fully physical. Shadows stretched upward, forming the suggestion of limbs, of faces pressed together, of mouths opening and closing without sound. Every doll ever buried in Black Hollow began to scream. From closets. From attics. From graves. Forgotten by time. Porcelain cracked in unison. The changed villagers stepped forward together. They did not fall in. They offered themselves. One by one, they descended into the well, their movements calm, reverent, as if answering a call they had waited their whole lives to hear. Lily's mother was last. She turned back once, her eyes briefly clearing. I'm sorry, she whispered, to no one. Then she was gone. The well sealed itself. The ground smoothed. The square fell silent. Annabelle stepped down from the stone and walked toward the church, her porcelain feet leaving no prints behind. She stopped in front of Miriam. It's almost time, the doll said softly. Tomorrow, it walks without me. Miriam looked into Annabelle's eyes, and finally understood. The doll wasn't the curse. It was the cradle. Night fell. And beneath Black Hollow, something that had learned how to wear bodies began to practice standing on its own. By the fifth day, Black Hollow smelled wrong. Not like decay, not yet, but like something warming. As if the ground itself had begun to sweat, preparing for movement. The air clung to skin. Breathing felt borrowed, like every inhale needed permission. There were fewer people now. Those who remained moved carefully around the empty houses, avoiding the well, avoiding the church, avoiding each other's eyes. Silence had become dangerous. So had sound. Old Miriam was dying. She knew it. The way the whispers leaned closer each hour told her so. The thing beneath the village no longer needed her memories, but it resented them. She lay on the church floor, chalk circles smeared around her, bones trembling beneath thin skin. The priest sat beside her, rosary clenched so tightly his knuckles bled. "Tell me how to stop it," he begged. Miriam laughed weakly. "Stop." Her eyes fluttered. "You don't stop hunger. You redirect it." She forced herself upright, gasping. It was never bound to the doll alone. Annabelle was just the first successful shape. Porcelain lasts. Porcelain listens. A crack echoed through the church ceiling. Fine dust rained down. "It's remembering its real body now," Miriam whispered. "And it wants the rest." Outside, the changed ones returned. Not all of them. Some bodies were too broken to walk back. Some had been kept. But those who came moved differently now, less stiff, more confident. Their steps were synchronized, their heads lifting in unison as they stared at the church doors. And among them walked children. Too many children. Not ghosts. Not spirits. Occupied. The doors burst inward. The priest screamed as the congregation poured inside, surrounding the altar, their mouths opening together. From them came a single voice, layered, echoing, patient. "We remember you," it said. Annabelle stepped through last. She looked smaller now. Thinner. Cracks had begun to creep along her porcelain limbs, glowing faintly from within as if something inside her was pushing outward. Her painted eyes flickered, struggling to focus. She walked to Miriam and knelt. "You weren't supposed to last this long," Annabelle said softly. Miriam smiled through blood. "You always hated witnesses." The doll tilted her head. "You taught us that, too." The church groaned. The floorboard split open at the center aisle. From beneath rose the sound of bodies shifting together, wet, layered, wrong. Hands pressed upward through the cracks. Faces pushed against wood, stretching it thin, mouths opening in silent hunger. The thing beneath Black Hollow was standing. Not fully. But enough. Miriam grabbed Annabelle's arm. The porcelain burned. "You don't need the doll anymore," Miriam said. "That's why you're breaking her." Annabelle's smile trembled. For the first time, fear passed across her painted face. "I don't want to go back inside," she whispered. Miriam's grip tightened. "Then help us bury you properly." Outside, the earth began to rise. Houses tilted. Graves split. The well collapsed inward, vomiting bones and dolls and pieces of people that no longer remembered their names. The villagers screamed as the ground itself rearranged, forming something like a spine beneath the streets, something like ribs beneath the fields. The thing did not have a single shape. It had many. A child's arm here. A woman's face there. A cluster of mouths opening and closing in rhythm, tasting the air. Annabelle cried out as her porcelain chest split further, light pouring from the cracks. "I can hold it," she sobbed. Just for a moment. Miriam understood. The doll wasn't just a vessel. She was a lock. Miriam shoved Annabelle backward into the widening fissure in the church floor. The ground screamed. The thing recoiled, confused, furious, as Annabelle sank into it, her small body swallowed by shadow. The cracks in her porcelain flared white-hot. "No," the layered voice roared. "You promised." Miriam collapsed, smiling as the earth began to seal. The church imploded. Inward, crushing itself around the pit. Silence fell. For one impossible moment, Black Hollow held. At dawn, the village still stood. The ground was scarred but still. The whispers were gone. Those who survived crawled from hiding, blinking in disbelief. They had won. They burned the church remains. Salted the earth. Left Black Hollow behind forever. No one returned. Years later, construction workers clearing land for a highway found something deep beneath the ruins. A porcelain hand. Unbroken. Still warm. And somewhere far away, in a place with no memory of superstition, a little girl would soon find a doll that whispered in a voice she trusted. I held it as long as I could. The fire did not cleanse Black Hollow. It thinned it. Ash drifted for days after the village was abandoned, settling into cracks, sinking into soil, clinging to what remained of memory. The land looked empty, but it was not quiet. Silence, when stretched too long, becomes a container. And something had learned how to wait inside containers. Years passed. The road came later. A clean, straight highway cut through what had once been fields and graves, erasing the name Black Hollow from maps and mouths alike. Workers joked about the land being cursed when tools went missing, when radios crackled with children's laughter, when the ground felt strangely warm beneath their boots. They paved anyway. Progress was louder than superstition. The porcelain hand was found on the third week of construction. It emerged from the dirt when an excavator blade struck something solid that should not have been there. The machine jolted. The engine stalled. And when the operator climbed down to investigate, he found the hand resting neatly atop the disturbed soil, fingers curled gently inward, as if waiting to be held. Perfect. White. Unburned. The man laughed nervously and tossed it aside, but it landed upright. Standing. That night, the hand was gone. 2 weeks later, in a town 60 miles away, a shipment of antique dolls arrived at a second-hand store owned by a woman named Clara Wynne. She didn't remember ordering them. The paperwork was blank. The crates smelled faintly of smoke and wet earth. One doll stood out. Porcelain. Old-fashioned. Hair neatly braided. Its body showed faint cracks along the chest and arms, carefully repaired with something darker than glue. Clara felt an ache behind her eyes when she looked at it. An emotional pressure, like standing too close to someone else's grief. She named the doll Annabelle because the name felt finished. Like it had been waiting. The doll sold the next day. To a little girl named Emily Carter. Emily was quiet. Observant. The kind of child who listened longer than she spoke. Her parents were relieved when she took to the doll immediately, it laughed when she laughed, slept when she slept, and for the first time since they'd moved, Emily stopped waking up screaming at night. She started waking up talking. Not loudly. Just murmuring, as if continuing conversations that never ended. Her mother once asked who she spoke to. Emily smiled. Everyone. The house began to change. Not dramatically. Subtly. Doors closed more softly. Hallways seemed longer. The mirrors fogged even when no one showered. And sometimes, late at night, Emily's parents heard footsteps too small to be hers pacing carefully above their bedroom ceiling. Annabelle sat on Emily's bed, her porcelain cracks barely visible now, filled in with something that pulsed faintly when the lights were off. Inside the doll, something slept. Not the thing beneath Black Hollow. Not anymore. This was smaller. Sharper. A splinter of hunger that had learned a valuable lesson. Never grow too fast. Emily's school reported changes. Drawings filled with circles and stick figures standing around holes in the ground. Stories about sharing bodies and playing inside. A teacher asked Emily where she learned such things. Emily tilted her head. My doll remembers, she said. The first death happened quietly. A neighbor found slumped in her bathtub, eyes open, skin pale, no sign of struggle. You don't stop hunger. You redirect it. Annabelle had learned how. She was not a cradle anymore. She was a seed. Across the country, other dolls began to surface. Antique shops. Estate sales. Attics where no one remembered storing them. They all shared the same flaws. The same cracks. The same smile that arrived half a second too late. And beneath them all, like roots spreading quietly through dark soil, something began to reconnect. Not whole. Not yet. But aware. On Emily's 8th birthday, she asked for one thing. A place for Annabelle to sleep, she said. Her parents built a small wooden box, lined it with fabric, placed it at the foot of her bed. That night, Emily woke up standing inside the box. She didn't know how she fit. She didn't know how long she'd been there. Annabelle stood outside it, looking down at her. "You're ready," the doll whispered. Beneath the house, the ground trembled, not enough to be felt, but enough to be noticed by something that had once been buried alive. Far below concrete and time, something ancient shifted its attention. Not toward Black Hollow. Toward everywhere else. And for the first time since the fire, Annabelle smiled without being told to. Emily Carter disappeared on a Tuesday. Not vanished, emptied. Her parents found her sitting upright in bed when they came to wake her for school. Her eyes were open. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. Her chest rose and fell. But when her mother touched her cheek, she recoiled. Emily's skin felt wrong. Not cold. Not warm. Borrowed. "Emily," her father whispered. She turned her head slowly, joints moving with careful precision, and looked at them with eyes that were no longer hers. "She's busy," Emily said. The voice layered itself as she spoke, one tone sliding beneath another, a chorus struggling to sound like a child. Annabelle sat at the foot of the bed, hands folded, porcelain perfect, watching. The parents screamed. Emily did not react. The doctors called it catatonia. The priest called it possession. None of the words mattered. Emily was admitted to a long-term care facility, placed in a white room with padded walls and mirrors removed after she began speaking to her reflection. Annabelle was confiscated. Locked away. But separation had never mattered. That night, every child in the ward woke at the same time. Nurses later said they heard singing, soft, tuneless, wrong, coming through the halls. When they arrived, the children were standing at their bedsides, heads tilted, smiling toward the corners of their rooms. Something stood there with them. Not visible. But present. In the storage room, Annabelle's box cracked open. The doll stepped out on porcelain feet that never touched the floor. She was not alone. The splinter inside her, patient, careful, had grown strong enough to open a door. Not downward. Outward. Across the country, children woke screaming from the same dream, standing in a village with no name, holding hands around a well that breathed. Dolls sat at the edges, watching. Waiting. In Black Hollow's ruins, the ground finally gave way. Deep beneath the highway, beneath concrete and denial, the thing that had once needed cradles and vessels stretched into its remembered shape. Not a body, but a system. A network of mouths and memories and doors. It did not rise. It didn't need to. It reached. Emily stood in the white room, her body rigid, as something inside her stepped forward. Her mouth opened wider than it should have. Annabelle appeared behind her. "You promised," the deeper voice said through Emily. "You said you would hold me." Annabelle tilted her head. "I did," she replied gently. "Long enough." The air split. Every doll, every vessel, every seed responded at once. Children screamed. Adults fell to their knees. And something ancient poured itself into the spaces left behind by belief. Emily's body collapsed, finally empty. Annabelle caught her before she hit the floor. "I'm sorry," the doll whispered, not to Emily, but but to the world. She didn't come alone. The lights went out. When they came back on, the room was empty. Emily was gone. Annabelle was gone. So were 3 nurses. So was the mirror that had been bolted to the far wall. Weeks later, the case was closed. Labeled mass hysteria. Shared delusion. Tragedy. But the dolls kept selling. And children kept listening. Somewhere beneath everything, roads, houses, prayers, something that learned patience through porcelain finally stood tall enough to stretch its shadow across the world. And it smiled. Because death was never the end. It was only the beginning.